have two children who have perished in this fire.
An investigation continues following a deadly apartment fire in Hamilton over the weekend. Good afternoon. 3 people, including 2 children, died in the fire that broke out in a first-floor unit yesterday morning.
A dozen people were taken to hospital. The cause of the blaze still under investigation. CTV's Janice Golding is live in Hamilton today and joins us with the latest. Janice.
Hi, Natalie. Yes, a very tragic story unfolding here by Hamilton's waterfront. 2 children are dead, as is an adult, after a very significant fire which drew more than 60 firefighters to the scene. Now, Hamilton Fire tells us that they were called to the scene, 35 Brock Street, near Catherine and John, at about 10:15 a.m. yesterday. And when they arrived here, crews saw flames and smoke pouring from a first-floor unit. Firefighters quickly made their way into the building, but were met immediately with heavy smoke in the hallways and stairwells. Fire Chief David Cunliffe says at the same time they had people trying to evacuate, which, quote, became a challenge. Crews had to assist people out of the stairwell and get them down to the ground floor and perform rescues, all while trying to get to the unit in question.
When the firefighters got to the first floor, to the apartment, we had fire blowing out of the apartment into the hallway. Extreme heat, extreme smoke, extreme flame. Firefighters tried to get into the apartment. They were forced back. They applied firefighting water agent onto the fire, quickly got it knocked down. We're able to get into the apartment. Unfortunately, I have to report that we have 2 children who have perished in this fire, and we have an adult that's also perished in this fire.
Hamilton Fire says its prayers are with the family and loved ones of the deceased. Now, 8 people were transported to hospital. 2 others were treated at the scene but refused further medical treatment. The fire marshal is on scene, but he tells us that it is far too early for him to make a determination as to what exactly caused the blaze. Reporting live from Janice Golding, now back to Michelle and Natalie.
Thank you, Janice. Police are searching for a suspect accused of sexually assaulting 3 women. Investigators have released this image of the suspect. They say he is responsible for 3 sexual assaults in the span of 2 hours in North York on Sunday. Police say in all the cases, the suspect sexually assaulted the victim before running away. The first incident happened in a women's change room at a fitness center in the area of Yonge and Shepherd. The suspect is described as being in his late 20s to early 30s with a thin build, short curly hair and a beard. Police are asking anyone with information to come forward.
Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow has declared food insecurity an emergency in the city.
Kids across our city are waking up hungry and depend on food banks. And in December, Toronto City Council declared food insecurity an emergency. Yet there is hope. This morning, 757 students here at Islington Junior will get a mid-morning meal of cheese and crackers and strawberries, fresh strawberries. These children would be focusing on learning, not their grumbling tummies.
Chow made the announcement at Islington Junior Middle School this morning, calling on the province to increase funding for school food programs and for the federal government to boost supports. Chow says 1/3 of current food bank users in Toronto are children.
2 city councillors, including the TTC board chair, are asking the transit agency to improve their communications when it comes to service disruptions.
This motion will tackle critical service delays and take concrete steps to improve subway reliability and ensure better communication with riders during service interruptions.
TTC Chair Jamal Myers and TTC Commissioner Josh Matlow have put forward a motion at the TTC board meeting today asking the transit agency to address critical service delays and issues.
When there are delays that are even inevitable, when there is a good reason for one, at the very least, we need information from the TTC about how long it's going to go for, so we can make a decision about whether or not you remain or maybe try to find a different way to get around.
The pair says they want specifics on major delays last week when a rail was damaged, as well as information on an issue with the TTC's automated train control signaling system that happened in December. And starting tonight and lasting through Friday, subway service between St. George and St. Andrew stations will end at 11 p.m. Regular service is set to resume each morning.
A new poll suggests the Ontario Liberals are closing the gap with the Progressive Conservatives. The Liaison Strategy Survey, which was conducted last week, polled just over 1,300 Ontario voters. It found the PCs have 31% support, with the Liberals in second at 23%. The NDP has 14% support, with 26% of respondents indicating they remain undecided.
The early election call is influencing numbers for now, and not in the direction that Premier Doug Ford wants. We've been seeing, ever since the new year, week after week after week, more early election speculation, and also the Ontario Liberals going up week over week over week, to the point that they've gained so much now that it's outside the margin of error, and they're gaining consistently in regions that are important to them: Northern Ontario, the 905, and the City of Toronto.
The poll is considered accurate within 2.7%, 19 times out of 20.
2024 was a banner year for tourism in Toronto. Destination Toronto says tourism added $8.8 billion to the city's economy last year. Toronto say 9 million overnight visitors, the most since the COVID-19 pandemic, with international tourists accounting for nearly a third of that total. Major events included, of course, Taylor Swift's concerts, the NHL All-Star Game, and the Toronto International Film Festival.
Seeing overall just how important tourism is to our city.
Yeah.
So when you see $8.8 billion, that's new money coming into our economy. So you're right, it's a little bit higher than what we had seen in 2019 in terms of the dollars. Yeah. The total number of visitors still not all the way back yet, but it's making its way back. It's getting much closer. The U.S. numbers are coming back up. The international numbers are starting to come back. So you've got this combination of the return of visitors and some inflation. We've obviously seen price increases since 2019. But at the end of the day, that's $8.8 billion in new dollars coming into our economy, which is so important to thousands of jobs.
And how about this? Destination Toronto says it's also expecting big numbers in 2026, highlighted by the FIFA World Cup in June and July.
More news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon down at Nathan Phillips Square. Bright and beautiful, but oh so windy out there. Let's bring in CTV's Lindsay Morrison now for more on the current conditions. Lindsay, you're live at the Maple Leafs outdoor practice this afternoon. Very cold day for a skate.
Very cold day, Natalie, but you know what? I don't think anyone's complaining because it has been so much fun here. We're right down by Lake Ontario, but the sun is shining and it is a great day for community hockey. I'm here with the Humber Valley Sharks. Did you guys have fun watching the practice today?
Yeah. Very fun. Very fun.
I mean, they got a little bit of hardware to take home here. We got a hockey stick, we got a puck, and was it too cold for you guys out here today?
No, not really.
No one's complaining, even though it's very windy. And we are expecting those winds to strengthen later on today, Natalie and Michelle. Let's take a look at our current gusts, though. Those winds coming out of the southwest right now, very strong, but what the winds are doing is helping usher in some milder air, and our temperature is not that bad, at least compared to last week. There are some weather advisories in effect that we want to talk about, including special weather statements, wind warnings. We could experience gusts close to 80 kilometers per hour here locally in Toronto today. So a heads up for potential for power outages, but also later on today, some snow is going to blow through, and those winds could reduce visibility and make it pretty tricky for driving. Here's a look at what you need to know as far as satellite and radar and those current temperatures. Yeah, do bundle up if you're heading out. Don't forget the sunglasses like I did. But it is a beautiful day in the Mimico area today. It's the Mimico Maple Leafs today, we should call them. What do you think? Was it pretty cool to see your heroes in action today?
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah,
What was the
it
best
was
part?
I think just seeing all the best players play.
Yeah.
It was very fun.
We're just waiting for them to leave, actually, so there's still a big crowd, even though the practice has come to an end. We're going to send it back inside. Lots more to talk about when it comes to your forecast, but what do you say? Should we do a Go Leafs Go chant? 1, 2, 3. Go Leafs Go! Go Leafs Go! I'll send it back to you, Mish.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate them stopping by. To some other news now, and plans to build an airport in Pickering have been scrapped. The Trudeau government now says it would not be the best use of federal land. Ottawa will look to transfer the thousands of acres to Parks Canada. The government acquired the land for an airport back in 1972, but put those plans on hold 3 years later to expand Ontario's already built airports. More than half of the land was transferred to Parks Canada over the past decade for the Rouge National Urban Park, but Transport Canada still had about 8,700 acres for a potential future airport. Consultations will be held with various stakeholders, including those who have since leased the land.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he will impose tariffs on Canada starting on February 1st.
Now, there is concern Canadian leaders are not all on the same page when it comes to dealing with a potential trade war. CTV's Alison Bamford reports.
With national unity in question, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith insists she did nothing wrong when she spoke up against Canada's plans to push back on U.S. tariffs.
I did my part saying, let's focus on the things that we know the Americans care about, national security and border security, and everybody else went off freelancing. And the thing they kept returning to was punishing Alberta and punishing energy.
Smith is against any idea of cutting off energy exports to the United States and doesn't want the focus to be on counter tariffs, public opposition to her fellow premiers that experts say makes Canada look weak.
All of the other provinces so far have said, look, we're willing to make short-term sacrifices to try to deal with this crisis. And that doesn't seem to be where Danielle Smith is right now.
Experts say unity and discipline were quite effective last time Canada dealt with Trump's tariff threats. Canadian mayors along the U.S. border are taking a page out of that playbook, forming what they call the Border Mayors Alliance.
We do need to stand firm and I think present our business case and rely and lean on relationships, because at the end of the day, that's going to be the most valuable thing we have.
Speaking at a rally in Las Vegas over the weekend, President Trump once again touted his looming tariffs.
The tariff system made so much money. It was when we were the richest, from 1870 to 1913.
That was back when the federal income tax didn't exist and tariffs were a major revenue driver. But others point to the 20% tariffs in the 1930s that worsened the severity of the Great Depression.
A tariff will be devastating to Canada. It'll be equally devastating to the United States, and especially the 13 states that are along our Canadian border.
Alison Bamford, CTV News.
An Ontario MP is calling for an investigation into Elon Musk and his social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. NDP MP Charlie Angus has asked Elections Canada to investigate potential interference in the upcoming federal election. Musk is currently under investigation by the European Union over political meddling in Europe. Elections Canada says the decision to investigate would be up to the Commissioner of Canada Elections, an independent officer responsible for enforcing the Canada Elections Act.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Poland today, marking the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp.
CTV's Colton Prale has been traveling with the Prime Minister and has more on the somber memorial.
It was exactly 80 years ago today that the Red Army marched through the gates, marched into the barracks behind me, and found what were some of the most devastating atrocities of the 20th century. Hundreds of bodies, but also 7,000 weary and weak survivors. Among those survivors, Miriam Ziegler. She's a 9-year-old girl, Canadian, now living in Toronto. She's coming back here today with the Prime Minister to take part in what is one of the most profound commemorations of the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. This liberation and this anniversary even more touching now as the number of survivors gets progressively older, and this is one of the last few major anniversaries where there will be a significant number of survivors present. The Prime Minister, along with 2 Canadian survivors and the ambassador combating anti-Semitism, will be here for the event, where they'll hear from other camp survivors throughout the day. There will be musical performances. He spent the day speaking with the 2 Canadian survivors early this morning before touring House 88. You may remember it from the Oscar-winning film Zone of Interest. It's where the commander of Auschwitz-Birkenau plotted and planned the devastating horrors that happened at this camp. There are a number of other foreign dignitaries here as well. King Charles, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will be among those who are in attendance. There's media from around the world here to take in this incredibly significant event. It's part of a 3-day trip the Prime Minister has made to Poland primarily to mark this International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Along with that, he'll also be speaking with international partners and top Polish officials throughout the trip. They'll cover issues like NATO spending, the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, and, of course, global security. NATO spending will be a significant topic, as here in Poland, they're one of the countries most urging others to increase their NATO spend. Canada, one of the few countries in the group that doesn't have a plan to hit 2% that is fully costed. Afterwards, tomorrow, the Prime Minister will be meeting with the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk. On the agenda, potentially nuclear energy. That's something that the PM has said he wants to cover on this trip. We know last month that Export Development Canada issued a letter of intent that could see Canada finance $2 billion towards the construction of Poland's first nuclear power plant. But today, the focus is squarely on the scene behind me and ensuring the phrase "never again" remains true. Colton Prail, CTV News.
A former Canadian Armed Forces member known as Canadian Dave has been freed after spending 2.5 months in Taliban captivity.
It's been a difficult Christmas for everybody involved, different holiday break. So just absolutely relieved and overjoyed that there's a positive conclusion to all this.
David Lavery helped more than 100 people leave Afghanistan during the fall of Kabul. He was detained by the Taliban on November 11th, and his location remained unknown for several weeks. On Sunday, a Qatari official confirmed he had arrived in the capital of Doha. For more on this story, we are joined live by CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott, what details do we know at this point about Lavery's release from Taliban detention?
Good afternoon, Natalie. Nearly 3 months in captivity, 3 months being held by the Taliban in Afghanistan, and now this big diplomatic breakthrough that is being applauded, of course, by friends and family. A huge sigh of relief for them and those who worked with him as well, but also from the Canadian government. We now know that David Lavery, affectionately known as Canadian Dave, is recovering in Doha. Much of this with the help of the Qatari government. So here's what we know about his release. Released yesterday and flown out of Afghanistan with the support of the government of Qatar. The Veterans Transition Network, with whom Canadian Dave was working with, saying they are relieved and overjoyed to confirm the safe relief of David Lavery from Taliban detention in Afghanistan. No doubt the past several months, incredibly emotional for the family, but also for many weeks. Behind the scenes, a big push diplomatically to get him out. That, of course, these negotiations at times incredibly fragile. What we're hearing from the Veterans Transition Network and Lavery's family, a lot of the work behind the scenes kept out of the headlines, kept out of the spotlight over concerns about this could put him at greater risk and potentially jeopardize this release as well, as I mentioned, with the help of the Qatari government, the government of Canada, and other friends and allies in the region. Melanie Jolie also chiming in, applauding the release of Dave Lavery and confirming his safe passage as well, saying on social media that she has spoken with Lavery, he is in good spirits, and she also went on to thank her Qatari counterparts for helping facilitate his release and get him out of Afghanistan.
Wow. And Scott, why was he detained in the first place, and where was he being held?
Natalie, at this point, we do know that he was detained on November 11th, 2024, late last year as he was entering Afghanistan, picked up at the Kabul airport. He had been in and out of Afghanistan with the Veterans Transition Network several times, helping Afghans who had been helping Canadians for many years. As I said, he was picked up at the Kabul airport and held by the Taliban's General Directorate of Intelligence for specific reasons still unknown. Even his whereabouts initially for several weeks were unknown until his family and the Veterans Transition Network were able to confirm his safety. Now, after many weeks of diplomacy and with help of those several partners in the region, Lavery is out of harm's way. As I mentioned, a huge sigh of relief for friends and family, those he worked with, but also the Canadian government as well, Natalie.
Okay.
We turn our attention to the Middle East, where Israel says a Hamas list shows 8 of the 33 hostages scheduled to be released in the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire are dead. The Israelis received the list from mediators of the truce. It says the other 25 hostages are alive. About 90 people are still being held by Hamas. Israel says the next release will take place Thursday, followed by another on Saturday.
In the Gaza Strip, tens of thousands of Palestinians are beginning to return to the heavily destroyed north for the first time since the early weeks of the war. Crowds walked along a seaside road all day and into the night after Israel opened the north as part of the ceasefire agreement with Hamas. People who have been sheltering in squalid tent camps and former schools are eager to return to their homes, even though they are likely damaged and destroyed. In all, about 90% of Gaza's 2.3 million people have been displaced. Elsewhere, the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended to February 18th.
The Canadian government is imposing sanctions on 10 people and 12 entities in Belarus. Officials say it is a result of what they call gross and systematic human rights violations by Minsk. Foreign Affairs is also condemning Sunday's presidential election in Belarus. Alexander Lukashenko claimed victory in a vote Canada calls fraudulent. Other Western governments have also rejected the election as a sham. The authoritarian president has extended his more than 3 decades in power.
Researchers at Montreal's McGill University are giving new meaning to the phrase baby on board.
A skateboard is an essential part of a new study looking how the littlest learners respond to language. CTV's Maria Saru explains.
Baby Arabelle is on the move. With the help of a small skateboard, she's crawling towards sounds coming out of a speaker. It's part of a study about early language learning, and Arabelle's parents are on board too.
Babies' brains are they're pretty amazing.
Researchers at McGill's Baby Lab are trying to show that infants recognize familiar and unfamiliar languages. The babies hear sentences in English, French, or Mandarin. 6 sensors attached to their legs and back measure muscle activity.
So English, she was more calm. French, she was more active. And in Mandarin, she was somewhere in the middle, which is interesting because she had never been exposed to Mandarin before.
The researchers say babies are primed to learn languages from birth. Arabelle already has billions of neurons forming pathways for language processing. And as she grows, her brain will strengthen connections for sounds she hears often. For babies in bilingual homes, the study could reveal which language resonates more, says lab director Linda Polka.
Will they maybe tune into one language and respond to that one before they respond to the one that they hear less?
She says even at 1 or 2 months old, trying to crawl is more than a reflex. It's intentional.
It shows that even though babies may look like they're not doing anything, that they're actually, they have some abilities and they are learning.
The techniques to test how babies this young are tuning into the world around them are few, Polka says. This approach could unlock new possibilities. But the researchers need more participants. Parents who are interested in taking part in the research have until August. Maria Saru, CTV News.
Well, the Leafs outdoor practice has wrapped up, but the fun continues here at Prince of Wales Park. On the lot, we're having lots of fun. We're enjoying the sunshine, and hopefully you can too, because things are going to change a little bit later today. Here's your afternoon, evening, and overnight at a glance. The strong wind sticking around. We are expecting some snow into the night tonight. That will lead to reduced visibility, maybe some strong squalls, and then overnight our temperature is set to plummet. Lots to talk about when it comes to your weather forecast. We'll have a full look at the forecast right after this break here on CTV News at noon.
We turn our attention outside. There is a special weather advisory because of the wind today, but definitely doesn't look like that's bothering any fans who were catching the Maple Leafs practice at Etobicoke.
It did seem very gusty out this morning, and I know, Lindsay, there's lots of next generation Leafs players there with you today.
There really is, and I think these are diehards. They would have been out here rain, shine, snow, and of course, windy weather too. That's what we're dealing with right now. The practice has wrapped up, but the fun continues here on the lot. There's a little bit of embroidering happening over here, over my shoulder. This is an area called the lot. Lots of activities going on, lots of fun still to be had, even though the practice is all wrapped up. The Stars have made their way onto their buses, and they're out of here for now. But I want to talk to Jonathan. Show me what you just had done there.
I just done a patch
on the hat. And this is a patch that's dialed in and leaves forever. It's really fun to go out to these practices because for a normal disabled Maple Leafs fan, you don't get tickets very much, and it's very expensive. So these outdoor practices and outdoor fun activities is great for a Maple Leafs fan.
It is. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to get up close and personal with your heroes, these wonderful players who made the time today for the community. And that's really what it's all about, Natalie and Michelle. Hockey in the community. So many kids here, lucky enough to be, I think, missing some school today to be out here. Lots of fun for everyone and enjoying the conditions. But I don't know if we're going to be enjoying the weather conditions so much a little bit later today. There's lots going on. Let's get to your weather forecast. And we're going to begin with that patchwork of weather advisories in place, including a wind warning for the Niagara area as well as over toward Kingston. This is where winds could be clocking in anywhere from 90 to 100 kilometers per hour this afternoon. We are under a special weather statement in the city of Toronto, warning of gusts around 80, maybe even 90 kilometers per hour. So with conditions like that, you have to prepare for possible power outages. And then later tonight, here's a little forecast sample of what the winds are going to be like later on today and tonight. Eventually they change from a southwesterly flow to more of a northwesterly. That is going to send our temperature plummeting through the overnight hours tonight. It's also going to pick up quite a bit of snow that's expected to fall. So we do have a cold front, very sharp, that's going to swing through a little later this evening. The snow, here's a look at how much you can expect. It's really just a couple of centimeters here locally in Toronto. In this particular situation, it's not about the amount of snow. It's again those winds picking it up, making for near zero visibility in the snowbelt areas today, and perhaps around the GTA a little bit later as well. The timing of this, it's an evening situation for the most part. Around the overnight hours, this is going to taper off. Tomorrow is a brighter day, but then another round of snow looks to move in later on. Here's a quick look at tonight's lows. Yes, the temperature is going to fall. We'll quickly get to tomorrow's highs just to show you that it is going to be a colder day, and waking up tomorrow morning, it is once again going to feel like -20. Snapshot look at the 7-day forecast. We will have another look at that coming up a little later on the program, but we're having a great time here down by the lake at the Prince of Wales rink. For now, Michelle and Natalie, I'll send it back over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And from hockey to soccer, there are 500 days until the 2026 FIFA World Cup comes to Canada, the United States, and Mexico.
The Canadian men's team is currently ranked 31st in the world, the highest in their history. Our Sean Leathong sat down with Canada's head coach to talk about how the team is preparing.
Jesse Marsh, the coach of Team Canada Soccer going into the World Cup. Do you allow yourself to think of that moment, the moment when you step out onto the pitch, it's on Canadian soil, and just feeling that energy?
Well, today being the 500 days, I think it's inevitable that you allow yourself to think about it a little bit. But for me, it's about the preparation and the details of making sure that when those 500 days arrive, that the team is ready. So we're excited. We believe in our team, and we just want to make sure in every way that we're ready for that moment.
So 2025, can you break down your goals for this year? Because you do have a calendar year and then some to get ready for the World Cup.
Yeah, we have a couple of trophies to compete for. So in March, we're going for a Nations League title. So we play Mexico in the first round, and then we'd play the winner of Panama and the U.S. after that. And then there's the Gold Cup in the summer. And these are, I think, when you don't have qualification, because when you're a host nation, you go automatically into the tournament versus having to qualify through your region, there aren't as many intensely meaningful games, right? There's a lot of friendlies in there, and they still carry a lot of importance and weight, but not the same as a competitive environment or a competitive tournament. So it will be important that we take advantage of those moments, but we're also planning on scheduling some really good opponents this calendar year. So I think there's a big opportunity for us to continue to push ourselves and to continue to improve.
When we think back to Qatar, Canada qualifying for the first time in a very long time, just before your tenure, there was an air of making history just by putting one in the net. Now, Canada is ranked higher than we've ever been ranked. What's the difference?
Well, I think mostly the ambition of the players, right? I think that After having the experience in Qatar, I think they enjoyed the experience, and I think a lot of them performed really well. But I know that they also carry disappointment, that they weren't able to find the first point for Canada in a World Cup. And so, you know, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves and talk about big, grandiose goals, but we do believe in ourselves, and this team believes in themselves. And we know that with the experience of 2022, with the momentum that we've built over the past years, and now where the talent pool is of the team and where the game is in the country and the types of clubs that the players play in, that the potential is real. Right? It's no longer the talk of like maybe what can they do or maybe they can make a little bit of noise. We think now that we're good enough to really earn our way through this tournament. There's still a lot of work to do, but the belief is growing. In my time since I've been here, I've seen that.
And tune into CTV News at 5 and 6 o'clock for more of Sean's interview with Jesse March.
Well, the matchup has been set for Super Bowl 59.
Here's Barkley, a little shovel, looking for an edge, gets it, Saquon Barkley, first down, Barkley, oh! Saquon, touchdown! Hurts.
The Philadelphia Eagles booked their spot in the big game with a 55-23 win over the Washington Commanders yesterday. The team is back in the Super Bowl after making an appearance in 2023, and they will be playing a familiar opponent.
Orbit motion, now peels back to the left. Chiefs are chasing Josh Allen. He throws it up for grabs, and the pass is incomplete! Incomplete! Off the arm of the would-be receiver!
That was so close. The Kansas City Chiefs were able to hold off the Buffalo Bills to secure their third straight Super Bowl appearance. The defending champs beat the Bills 32-29 to give themselves a shot at becoming the very first team ever to win 3 straight Super Bowls. The Chiefs and Eagles will square off in New Orleans on February 9th.
Still to come on CTV News at noon, a new study indicates single women are happier than single men. We'll dive into the data when we come back.
Well, despite what the stereotypes might tell you, single women are absolutely perfectly happy. Yes, this is the conclusion from a university study. We have CTV's Dan Riskin here to explain, and you are not a single woman at all.
I'm not. I'm neither single nor a woman.
But guess what? I think you're still well equipped to help us explain this, and I'm curious why they even studied this in the first place.
It's really interesting. I think it comes down to that stereotype that you see in the movies all the time where two women go for coffee and they're just, I just can't believe I'm still single, and how am I ever going to get Brad to notice me? You know, it's ridiculous, but, you know, what does the science say? And so some researchers at the University of Toronto went to work on it. They got 6,000 people who were single. They asked them a bunch of questions about how happy they are in their lives, about are you happy being single? Are you happy with your life? Are you sexually satisfied? Do you wish you had a partner? And in all 4 of those measures, men are less happy than women. So women are doing just fine, thank you very much. You can take your little stereotypes and put them away because they don't really apply.
Yeah, the data doesn't apply. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, well, let's talk about dogs, single or not. I have a dog, you have a dog, and you've got a new study out about whether there are more pros or cons of having a dog. There's got to be a net positive here.
Totally. That's exactly it. There's got to be a net positive. You have a dog, so you know, right? We all know. And this was a study of people who already have a dog. So obviously they were biased this way, and I really think the researchers were biased too. I would love to see a neutral study that goes into this. I feel like this one, they had their thumb on the scale a little bit. So they asked a whole bunch of questions of dog owners. Is, you know, on a scale of -3, very bad, to +3, very good, how do you feel about the fact that dogs sometimes eat your furniture? Well, I guess a -1. How do you feel about the fact that a dog is like a member of the family? Ooh, like a +2.5 or whatever. And so they did this whole thing. And you get to the final conclusion that there's more positives than negatives, but it was a little bit biased by the way they set up the questions, right? They could have had a bunch of really negative questions if they wanted to get a different result. But they did have an open-ended part of it, and in the open-ended part, people reported, 2/3 of people say the best part of having a dog is that it's a companion. And that's an important finding, that's really the big take-home. And for the negatives, The thing that most people agree is the bad thing about a dog, 95% people say it's the cost. It's just so expensive, especially if you have a big vet bill, if there's a surgery or something like that. That really is the biggest drawback, even bigger than the drawback that they don't often, stay alive for as long as you would like.
Right. But if they didn't want a dog, they wouldn't have a dog.
Right, exactly. So these are people that already have a dog, and they didn't compare them to people that don't have a dog. So if you have a dog, you're probably going to be happy about it, I think is one way to look at it. And that's definitely true in our house.
Well, I don't have a dog. I love other people's dogs. Something we all have, our kids. We each have 3 kids. And the next study is about, and I think this is great, and I think we've probably seen this in our own lives, studying about talking to kids about fruits and vegetables, but doing it in a way where you talk about the magic of fruits and vegetables and the power of fruits and vegetables. What did this research find?
Yeah, my kids are getting old enough now that they're like, show me the data, Dad.
Yeah.
Like, show me a scientific study. But when they were little, a story about magic really carried a lot of weight. And so this is a study of kids who are about 4 years old. And some of the kids were told about a story where their village was losing all of its color, and a magical set of fruits and vegetables, when the kids ate them, they became powerful and they were able to fight the bad dragon that was making the color go away. Another group of kids got the same story, but there were no fruits and vegetables in it. And then they spied on the kids to see what they chose to eat at the next meal. And the kids chose more fruits and vegetables if they'd heard the story about how the fruits and vegetables helped win the day. And that persisted for 2 weeks. And that was as long as the study went. It may persist even longer. So maybe a good story where cucumbers are the protagonist might be all you need to get your kids to eat them.
Oh, I love it, Dan. Remember Popeye and the Spinach? Come on.
Good point.
Yeah.
Totally.
Dan, appreciate your time. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Broccoli for dinner.
Yes.
Well, recent data finds that more than a third of Canadians are relying on the internet for medical advice.
It's a result of a shortage of family doctors impacting communities right across the country. CTV's Alex Carpo reports.
Kristen Kelly has spent the last 5 years looking for a family doctor.
It's just been a long process.
Kelly would spend hours waiting at a walk-in clinic and relied on the internet, including ChatGPT, for medical advice. Thankfully for her, she won't have to do that anymore.
I just try to stay healthy overall and hope for the best, but I'm happy that I found a doctor now.
But others aren't so lucky. Kim DeSorcy has been without a doctor since May 2024.
I'm very nervous about it. Thankfully, I'm a healthy person right now. I have a son that's a type 1 diabetic that doesn't have a doctor as well.
DeSorcy, too, has spent hours looking for doctors and has at times sought out medical advice online.
It's a concern. In the event that I did get sick, where would I go? And not having a family doctor, I don't have someone that has my family history.
A new poll from the Canadian Medical Association found that 37% of respondents used medical advice they found online because they couldn't access a doctor or a medical professional for help. Almost a quarter of those surveyed said following health advice they found online resulted in a bad reaction or had a negative impact on their health.
Leaning into team-based care, leveraging the skill set of all the healthcare providers in that team setting will help to address the needs and concerns of Canadians.
If you don't have access to a doctor or any medical professionals, the CMA says you should look to trusted sources such as the Public Health Agency of Canada or other organizations led by health professionals to gather information. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still to come, shares in electricity companies were down this morning, one as much as 20% on the TSX. The details after the break. Canada Post recently received $1 billion loan from Ottawa, but both sides admit the cash injection will not solve the underlying issues with the Crown Corporation.
The financial issues come amid growing calls to privatize the Postal Service. CTV's Kamal Karmali reports.
This small Toronto business has some big-time demands, with packages shipping around the country, but it's still struggling to carry the load.
Okay, ready to go.
In the aftermath of a Canada Post strike in December.
The strike hit us in the worst time that we could have.
So how do you feel about Canada Post after the strike?
I'm nervous listening, are they going to have another strike?
It's not just a month-long strike that's frustrated Canadians. Canada Post has lost $3 billion in the last 6 years. The federal government handed over a $1 billion lifeline that Canada Post said it would repay.
This is a $1 billion bailout. They will not get the money back because they didn't touch or address the structural problems.
That's
That's why some businesses that deal with a lot of packages say Canada should privatize its postal service, saying other countries have done the same.
The sale of UK's 500-year-old Royal Mail was approved in December to a Czech billionaire. Germany, the Netherlands, and Austria have also privatized their postal service.
The only way we're going to address the problems of the post office is to privatize it.
The benefits could be a service that's more competitive, prioritizing customers' needs to beat out other private couriers.
And you'd be able to negotiate some price, advantages and purchase a higher level of service.
The downside, possible job losses and potentially limited mail access to rural communities, especially in the north.
Smaller communities, indigenous communities.
The answer could be partial privatization, allowing the government to still have a strong say in the operations.
90% private, 10% public, maybe 80-20, something like that strikes me as a reasonable approach going forward.
Canada Post admits major structural change is needed, with many arguing it's time the current model was shipped off. Kamil Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Tech stops dropped this morning amid fears a Chinese artificial intelligence release is a major threat to Silicon Valley's dominance in AI.
Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. Tech stocks around the world came under pressure this morning. That's because a Chinese artificial intelligence startup called DeepSeek has raised questions over America's technological prowess. Chip giant NVIDIA, whose devices are used to power AI computing, fell 13%. DeepSeek's AI assistant is said to run on less advanced chips. Not all tech stocks suffered, however. Meta Platforms and Apple were up in morning trading. Shares in electricity generators dropped. Investors had hoped that a massive build-out of server farms to run AI would increase demand for power, but DeepSeek may threaten that growth. In Toronto, TransAlta and Capital Power fell more than 15%. Celestica, a maker of equipment for tech companies, plunged 20% on the TSX. And uranium shares also dropped. Promoters of those stocks have claimed that nuclear energy will be needed to run new data servers. Another factor, though, may be news from the giant producer Cameco that output has resumed at its joint venture in Kazakhstan. This means supply from the operation is coming back onto the market. Those are your business headlines. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
Coming up on CTV News at noon, living out a childhood dream. A BC man recently honored for volunteer work at his local fire station. Stay with us. A man in British Columbia has been honored for his volunteer work with his local fire department.
He never thought he would join his heroes until a group of first responders made his dream come true. CTV's Adam Sawatsky has the story.
Watching firefighters in the movies may be great, Richard McNaughton says, but nothing beats seeing a fire engine in real life.
Sirens and the flashing lights.
That's so good. Richard, who lives with a rare genetic disorder, loved firefighters so much when he was younger. His sister, Marcia, says whenever her back was turned, he'd call 911.
And they would arrive and he'd be hanging out the window. Hi, guys. How are you?
Although Richard was repeatedly told all the reasons why he shouldn't do that, he couldn't stop.
And it came to one of those situations, if you can't beat them, join them.
So the team at the time, including now retired Chief Dan Copeland, invited Richard to visit their hall to show him the seriousness of their responsibility.
Right away, just grabbed the hearts of the firefighters and the department.
When Richard first got to put on the oxygen tank and mask, he ran around the hall going, "Who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters!"
He earned the nickname Winston after one of the movie's characters and never called 911 again. But what impressed the firefighters most was not Winston's passion for their profession, but his constant question, consistent with all first responders: how can I help?
He wanted to be a part of the crew and didn't really know any different than, like, let's get at this.
And after excelling at volunteering around the hall and being an ambassador at public events, Winston was officially named an honorary firefighter and given his own uniform.
I was shocked and amazing.
Whether Winston's wearing his uniform or not, Marcia says, her brother carries around a first aid kit and is always set to serve.
Is the first one to run and help if somebody falls.
And the first one to call, Dan recalls, if something seemed off.
He would say, Danny, they didn't have their siren going. They had the lights on, but they didn't have the siren going. And I said, thanks for the tip, Winston. We'll deal with that. And
Richard was recently honored for 20 years of voluntary service with the department.
It's amazing. I mean, I appreciate all that they've done for me.
But the firefighters say they appreciate all Winston's done for them even more.
Said he's a natural. Yeah, he's crushing it today.
Adam Swansky, CTV News, Delta.
Uniform. All right, hold on to your hats. It's windy. How's it going, Lindsay?
It's windy, Michelle and Natalie, and I must say we've really enjoyed the outdoor lease practice here today, and one of the best things about it is the location. Check out this view behind me. You can see the city skyline, but you can also see the waves starting to pick up, some whitecaps visible because of these very strong winds that we're dealing with right now. Here's a look one more time at the weather advisories that are in place for today. Expect gusts around 80 kilometers per hour today in Toronto, stronger than that just outside of the GTA. If you're going to be traveling for this evening, a heads up for some snow squalls in addition to the gusty winds. Could be a tricky travel, especially in the evening. And there's a look at the 7-day forecast. A colder day tomorrow, milder though as we head into Wednesday and Thursday, but still a chance of flurries. That's it for now. Michelle and Natalie, I'll send it back inside to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Stay warm out there. And that is CTV's News at Noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Natalie Johnson. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6 o'clock.